Welcome to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. This is a special in memory of edition. We are remembering Bob Segarini, who we lost this past July 10th. And I have with me today two of his buddies from way back when. I've got Greg Godovitz and David Henman, who both have past relationships, friendships with Bob, and we're going to talk about that. So I understand, David, that you made the connection with Bob first. So why don't you start off by telling us something about Bob that maybe we didn't know, or that it was a pleasant memory for you?
I think the first time that I connected with Bob would have been 1974. That was after April Wine had split up and reformed, and I had a band called Silver. We played at this club in Montreal called the Three Aces. And one night we had just finished a set, and I saw at the other end of the room a gentleman walk in with his entourage wearing a tan colored trench coat. I think a black, what do you call those hats? I can't remember the name of those hats that they were.
Fedora.
Homburg. Yeah, something like that. And so there was Bob Segarini, and he walked right up to the stage and said, "Henman, I think you're brilliant." that was the beginning of decades of fun with Bob. Following that, I had moved to Toronto. I got married a girl from Toronto and had moved to Toronto, and got a phone call from my brother saying that Bob wanted to talk to us about something. So drove back to Montreal, met Bob in his living room in on whatever street that was. I have a great memory. And Bob said we're putting a new band together called the Dudes, all the young dudes, and would my brother and I and Brian Greenway and Cooch Trokum and Wayne Cullen like to join. And for the next few weeks, we sat in Bob's living room watching him arrange rehearsals, contact musicians, and alert the media in the US that he was forming a supergroup. And what do you want to know after that?
Well, I think we know that Bob was very much busy with contacts all the time. So he was largely responsible for you guys getting, I think it was the largest advance for a record deal of any band in history at that point.
No, just that year.
That year, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, there may have been something to what you said, the largest. There may be something else to that. I'm not sure, but it was the largest advance that year, as I recall. Actually, if you want to know something about Bob that nobody knows, actually, a few of us know, Bob was a vampire. I spent many nights on the road with Bob. I roomed with him. I never did see him sleep ever.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and
that's
I know
that's because the coffin was out in the truck.
Yeah, and I know, Greg, you've had a few adventures or misadventures with Bob as well over the years.
Many. Actually, I think I might trump David on who met him first, because do you remember the show Like Young in Montreal, David?
Yep, we did on that. Yeah.
So I met Bob when I was in Flood, and this is the height of glam rock. So I'm saying 72.
Yeah.
And he was there. We thought we were the only band doing the glam thing in Canada. I'd been in England when it all started, and I came back with like colored hair and flashy clothes. And the next week, the Pillings and I were back on a plane going over there shopping. But we arrive at the studio, and there's the Whackers. And I remember Randy Bishop and Bob were at one microphone together in a very suggestive fashion, doing the song Day and Night. And we didn't bother getting all glammed up because they were doing it. And we didn't want to look like we were copying them, you know. And then Bob and I went to the cantina and talked. And I just fell in love with the guy instantly, you know, like he has that way of doing. And the next thing I know, it's Christmas Eve, and he's in my mother and father's living room. And We never got rid of him. He was there all the time, eating pierogies and stuff.
Did he ask to borrow a 20?
A few times. I don't recall ever getting them back. But I have an off-track story, but before I forget it, Bob and I were sitting at the bar at Lee's Palace one day, and right at the one where you walked in the door and you could walk down to the other side of the building. And Juliette Lewis comes in, great little actress. She's also a punk rock singer. You know, she was the one in Beetlejuice, if you can't remember who she is. And she stops right in front of Bob and she goes, "You've got an interesting face." And then she kept walking. And he didn't say nothing. I said, "Bob, you know who that was?" And he goes, "Yeah, she's got a good point."
Oh,
so
man. He certainly had a sharp wit, and he
fast.
He suffered no fools. I can tell you that, because when I connected with him initially to do the first interview I did with him, I said, "Well, you know, I'm really excited that you're going to do this with me, and I've done my research." He says, "No, you haven't." He says, "Have you read my blog?" I said, "Well, I've checked it out." He said, "I want you to read this whole one." and so I read the whole thing. It was 30, 50 pages, whatever. And the funny thing is that I talked to him for over an hour just to arrange the interview. So he liked to talk, and he had a lot of stories to share, but he didn't suffer any fools, that's for sure.
Yeah. One of Bob's many talents, and this Bob has been our favorite coffee table conversation for decades. There's a lot of us, especially us ex-Montrealers, but a lot of Torontonians too, that have spent, you know, afternoons and evenings and long into the night talking about Bob, because he's just probably the most interesting and the most brilliant guy we know. And considering that we're sitting there with Greg Godovitz, that's saying a lot. But Bob used to do this thing that just amazed us. Bob liked to hold court, as we all know. And what he would do is he'd turn the TV on, then he'd turn the sound off, and then he would do the dialogue just off the cuff. And I mean, he'd have us at any given time, have us all just rolling on the floor, burning with laughter.
I know he was a rebel.
Fast.
Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
He was quick. My last conversation with Bob was about 2 weeks before he passed. And all we did was tell each other stories that were funny, and I couldn't stop laughing, and neither could he. And to me, it was a great resolve to a lifelong friendship, you know. Yeah. Was to go out on that. I mean, I knew he was going. He knew he was going. You could he sounded like he was leaving. But the mind and the wit and the delivery were right there.
Yeah.
And we were laughing and laughing. A lot of the stories, of course, I can't tell. But, you know, it was Bob and I, after all. So
yeah,
we had been in the bottom of the well for many years. So, at some point, I'll send you guys a little vignette of what went down. I think I'm going to put it in my new book.
The Trilogy of Idiots.
The new book is called The Idiots Trilogy Part 4.
Yeah. That's
the new book I'm working on. And I already wrote a story about Bob at the end of the new book. When I started writing this book 3 years ago around COVID, I dedicated it to Kelly J. He was the first of my friends that passed away at that time. I now have 56 names underneath his. And same with the art, Kelly J, pianist, Rolly Greenway, bass player, that kind of stuff. But then I moved all the names to the back of the book so I could write a half a page or a full page, or in Bob's case, 3 pages of memories, to let people that might not know. So what you guys and you people out there, what you don't want to do is end up on the dedication page of my new book. You don't want to do that.
Yes.
And me too.
Or as my wife likes to say, don't fall down.
It's true.
Yeah. Oh man, oh man.
Yeah, we don't mend as easy as we used to.
That's right.
No kidding. Oh
But
man.
you know what, David, when you think about it, now I'm going to be 73. Next year marks my 60th anniversary as a playing musician.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure you must be right there as well.
Yeah, I'm 75, started playing. Well, I started playing professionally when I was 15. So yeah.
Crazy. And we owe it all, of course, to Bob Segarini or the Beatles, one or the other, one of those two guys. Yeah. Probably the Beatles. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a kid. I'm 64, and I've only been playing music professionally for about 50 years. So I got some catching up to do.
I have a thong on older than 64. Which I'm very, either that or it depends. I'm not sure.
So I wish I could have been a fly on the wall. I remember reading your first book, and you talked about sitting around and having a few drinks with Bob and singing songs, and you guys would sing Beatles stuff and whatnot. That's someplace I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall for that.
He was a great harmony singer. He was a David Crosby singer. I think David might agree with that. He could find those really quirky harmonies, much like the way, well, first of all, David Crosby would do with Crosby, Stills and Nash. He'd find all those strange harmonies, and the same as John Lennon would do, where he would do a lower harmony that should have been the third above, and that was the Beatles sound, you know.
Yeah.
But Bob could come up with harmonies out of the air. We once did, Mr. Anger, our keyboard player, and Bob and myself were invited to sing the national anthems at it was a lacrosse game, and he didn't know the words to the Canadian anthem, which I thought, okay, he's American, but he also didn't know the lyrics to the American version of their anthem. But with Mr. Anger and I singing nice and clear, Bob just came in with this beautiful third harmony, and nobody could tell the difference.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
he was that guy. He could pick a harmony out of the air, man.
Yeah, that's talent. That's talent for sure. Yeah, there's we need more artists like that, and I'm sure we're all going to miss him. We all do miss him, and his legacy will go on for sure. And I'm
curious about that. I'm curious to know how Bob will be remembered, and it's, you know, probably the onus is on a lot of us to sustain that, to maintain that the legend, you know. And I'm not sure how we're going to go about doing that, but it's on us to do that. I'm waiting to hear that there's going to be some sort of celebration of life, because that will be probably go on for, I don't know, probably be a few sleepless nights when that happens. But anyway, I'm just really curious to see. I mean, there's got to be somebody's going to have to take it upon themselves to write the book.
Well, there's an interesting point. I've asked. I think apparently they got his computer, and I always said to Bob, why don't you take all those "Don't Believe a Word I Say" essays that you did and compile them? There's your book.
There you go.
That's how your mind works. That's how your comedy works. All those great stories that you've got, and you have a phenomenal writing style. I mean, he wrote the foreword in my first book, and I still reread it quite a bit, because it's just so better than anything I wrote, you know. And that line about, you know, Greg Godovitz is a boy that grew up to be a boy. I mean, that is a brilliant summation of how he saw me and how I feel about myself.
I'll tell you,
I think that's his powers of his powers of observation. I think that's probably at least one of the most remarkable things about Bob is the way he saw things. Just quite remarkable.
I asked Bob when I interviewed him about a book. I said, you know, you've got so many stories to tell, and like the first interview I did with him was over 2 hours. I had to split it in two parts. I said, why haven't you written a book? He says, because you could take any rock star out there and take their book and just insert my name in place of theirs. And I thought, well, to a point, I guess, we all have the same similar experiences, but I don't think he appreciated just how unique and genuine an individual he was.
Perhaps not. Yeah, perhaps not. I never thought of it that way. I mean, certainly he was a complex character. There's no question about that. And most of us probably only saw, a fraction of that. I don't know if I ever really got to know who the man was, other than who the way he presented himself, which was fascinating enough.
I think I only had one argument with him in the whole time that we knew each other. And it was a doozy, because afterwards I didn't talk to him for 3 years. And then it was Cheryl, my Mrs. Claypool. I had a 60th birthday party, and she made sure that Bob was there. She goes, "You miss your friend."
Yeah.
But we're both so stubborn, that I wasn't about to make the call, and neither was he. So we let her get in there and put us back together, and we just took off exactly where we left off. It was never mentioned.
I don't recall ever crossing swords with Bob. I mean, we must have had some disagreements, but I don't remember actually. Of course, I mean, we kind of lost touch quite a number of years ago. After the Dudes, Bob moved to Toronto, and actually he was part of a plot to kidnap me from Montreal and bring me to Toronto. Everybody, it was a serious plot, so they tell me. He was involved. Drew Winters and a bunch of people were involved in it, Glenn Reed and so on, because everybody had already moved to Toronto. But it wasn't too long after that I did move to Toronto, but we never, we always hung out. I mean, good Lord, the nights spent bar hopping in Toronto, most of which I don't even remember.
Were you at the rehearsals at Miguel's?
No, I did attend one or two of the. I was there once or twice when that guy
Jose Feliciano.
Yeah, Feliciano was there. Met him briefly, but no, I wasn't involved in the actual rehearsals.
Okay, but you had seen them.
I think so, yeah. The one thing we did get involved in was I was living in Richmond Hill. There was a bar called Rhythm and Cues. It was music and pool. And Bob, with a bunch of us, with the girls from Brave and Crazy, Sam and Susie, and I think Drew Winters, and then Glenn Reed, and a whole bunch of people formed the Rhythm and Cues All-Stars. And that evolved into a group called Cats and Dogs.
Great band.
Yeah, and they had, I think they did they had 2 CDs, and I was on the first one, but I don't know, I can't remember if I was on the second one, but that was Cats and Dogs. And for me, that evolved into another band that I've been with for 25 years called Brave and Crazy from
Okay, I don't think we're on the same page. So did you rehearse at Miguel's with Cats and Dogs?
At Miguel's, I must have.
That's where I used to go down and watch you guys rehearse.
Yeah. I must have, but I mean, I've never had a good memory. So, like, I was in this band called April Wine, and it's all a blur. I don't remember anything about that. But I mean, yeah, I guess we must have rehearsed at Miguel's then with Cats and Dogs. I just don't recall it. I know we played at this bar on near Eglinton called
Chicken Deli.
Originals.
Yeah, yes. I was there the night Princess Diana died, and you guys were on stage.
That's right. I remember you being there. Funny, I remember that.
Well, we all remember. That's another, where were you night?
Yeah, that's right.
This was sort of leading up to something. The way Bob's motives and his mind worked is he got Miguel, who was a boyhood friend of Jose Feliciano, had this little hole in the wall bar down on Queen Street in Parliament. and Bob would bring the band in there to rehearse in front of whoever showed up.
Right.
Basically, so that he could get, drinks from Miguel all night. I mean, I know you're laughing, but this is true. I mean, he would hold court. He organized the rehearsals. Usually it was somebody else doing the heavy lifting, like Susie or Drew singing or whatever. And Bob would be at the bar having a drink and enjoying the show. But it was one of the only time I ever saw them play a real gig, it was in a garage where people repair cars. I don't know if you were at that show. That's the only time I ever saw it.
I just, it's amazing how much I don't remember. And I don't remember. I mean, I do remember a couple of rehearsals with Raven Crazy, but not at Miguel's. But I mean, obviously, I was in the band, so I must have been there. But then I'm at some point with Cats and Dogs, I moved on. I don't remember why that was. Maybe I was forming. There was another band I was with called the
David,
Business.
let me see if I can get Richie on the phone, because he's the one with the memory.
Yeah.
Brother Rich.
My brother Richie remembers everything. He remembers everything.
So were you in April Wine when we used to do those gigs with Flood in April Wine?
Probably.
Yeah, see, I have a little bit of a blank spot in some of those because I talked to Miles about it. And he said, "Oh yeah, you guys were, we played quite a bit with you guys back in the day."
Yeah.
Well, we were the top 10 bands at the time. All the records were getting charted.
Yeah.
You guys and us.
Yeah. I mean, for me, April Wine was 1969 to 1973. And then the band kind of split up in the fall of 73 and then reformed with Jerry Mercer.
Yeah, well, I love him.
Yeah.
And Jim Clench was a wonderful guy too.
Yeah. The Jim Clench was a very unusual man. Yeah.
Great
So
baseball.
Just to get back on track from it, and yeah, that was the exact timeline. You guys did do that touring together back then. I can tell you, I remember that. So Greg, we'll start with you. If you could talk to Bob one more time, is there anything specific that you wish you would have said to him and that you would say to him?
No, I told him I loved him, and thanks for being a part of my life. And of course, he didn't want it to get it modeling, so he just made me laugh again, and that was the end of it. So no, I mean, Bob did a lot of great things. He did a lot of stuff that I would look at him with sideways at. But when push came to shove, like, I don't bandy the word genius around too much. There's only a few people, musician types, that I would think about that. He was a genius. There's no doubt in my mind. Everything that implies. First of all, he died broke. There you go. I say no more. I mean, it's like, my mother once said to me, "You're never going to be recognized in your lifetime." I said, "You can't say that to me." She goes, "No, you're going to be like one of those classical guys that gets discovered after you're dead." I said, "You're my mother. You can't give me a gypsy Russian curse. I don't need this, Instant Woody Allen minute, Yeah. And she did, and she's absolutely right, because I'm well on the way to dying in poverty. So I do have this, though, if anybody wants to buy it for $500,000.
Whoa. How do we put a bid in?
So no, I think Bob and I understood. He did that. I don't know, David, if you were involved with it. It was a Segarini band, but I was on vacation in Jamaica when Paul McCartney got busted in Tokyo. And I heard about it even down there. So I wrote a parody song called "Stuck in the Tokyo Jail," which was sung exactly to the tune of "Back in the USSR." And the lyrics were hilarious. And I got back and I sang it to Bob. He says, "Godovitz, we got to record that." So we went into Studio 306. Both of us had our ears on the Beatles record to see how long the jet engines go at the beginning. I mean, it was identical to the Beatles. And then the guys did these great Beach Boys harmonies. I tried to do my best Paul McCartney. I do a better John. But it turned out amazing. Now, this is pre-Al Yankovic. And we sent the track with a made-up cover of the McCartney picture from the White Album where he hasn't shaved, and we put bars in front of it. And we sent it to John Eastman's office, McCartney's brother-in-law. And somewhere in my records, I've got a letter from Eastman and Eastman saying, if you think about putting out that song, we will own everything that you own from now until the time you die. Don't even think about it. So we never, I mean, I should have just said being me. I should have said, you know, hell with you, John Eastman. We're going to put it out anyway. And then, of course, Weird Al came out and made millions of dollars doing the same thing. And I tried to find it today because Bob, of course, for as scattered as he could sometimes be, I said, Bob, have you got a copy of Stuck in the Tokyo Jail? He sent it to me 2 minutes later. And I know I have it somewhere. If I find it, I'll ship it off to both of you. Have you ever heard of David?
Don't think so.
Well, you think it's the Beatles, except some guy singing stupid lyrics. That's it. Yeah.
I thought that was Stars on 45. Anyway, David, if you had one more chance to talk to Bob, is there anything you wish you would have said to him that you'd like to say?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. I mean, first of all, I didn't get to say, I kind of envy Greg. I didn't get to say goodbye to Bob because I you know, I'm one of those people that thought he'd never pass away. I was pretty sure Bob would outlive all of us. And I mean, I probably didn't realize how serious it was when he was in the hospital from April till, was it July when he passed? July 10th? Yeah.
Yes.
So he was in the hospital for quite a long time. So I just I'm still kind of in shock, actually. Bob was like Keith Richards is not supposed to die. But I echo Greg's sentiment about Bob's genius, and what is something that that was part of that coffee table conversation that went on for decades. And a genius on so many levels. Of course, a genius musically, obviously, a genius in a literary sense. We used to say Bob should have his own island, but he should have had his own television show. He really should have had his a free-for-all television show. It's too bad nobody saw that. But again, you know, Bob was never the easiest guy to work with. You know, he was not a guy who worked under people. You know, he might start out working under someone, and then it was like, oh no, I'm smarter than you, so you should be working under me. But I mean, he could have been Howard Stern. He could have been Elvis Costello. He could have been John McAfee. I don't know. He just so much. Anything if he'd have chosen one specific vocation, whether it be music, whether it be books, writing, whether it be anything, he would have been the best on the planet at any one of those things. But Bob, being Bob, wanted to be all of them. Certainly can't fault him for that. But
everything he did, David, blew up. Everything. You know, he was on Q107. He was on the television. Him and I had a short-lived show called The Anger Brothers, which was hilariously funny. And it was just ad-lib comedy on the air. Yeah. But everything, all of a sudden, there was some guy from the front office going, you guys can't do that, okay? But we want to do that. You're fired.
Yeah.
And off we went, you know. And Bob was notorious for doing that.
Yeah.
He had umpteen chances to be what you said, Howard Stern, you know, whoever, you know, Elvis.
I think Bob was.
I mean, Elvis Costello. He knew who Bob was.
I think Bob was exactly who he wanted to be. You know, and I talked to him about his career in TV and so on as well. And I mean, he did a lot of voiceover work and so on. He told me about his battles with Moses Znaimer, for example. And I think he was exactly who he wanted to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he sure hated money.
unless it
was yours.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
A million stories, man. I mean, I keep thinking about some of the stuff that we got up to, and I go, well, you know, we didn't get caught. Yeah.
Listen, guys, I think it's safe to say that we could go on all day, or you guys could, and I could just sit here and enjoy it for the whole day. I want to thank you both so much for being here with me and doing this in memory of Bob Segarini. And until next time, cheers.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Tom.
God bless you, Bob.
With the lights out, we'll be sitting pretty. Scream me a pitiful scream. With the lights out, we'll be warm and willing. Better watch where I lean. When you gaze into my crystal ball, you see nothing's gonna change at all. You see nothing's gonna happen all the night. So please, when the lights are out and I hear you sigh, let me feel your warm breath on my neck. It makes me hit the sky. When the lights are out and I hear you sigh, let me feel your warm breath on my neck. It makes me hit the sky. With a whisper you can bow me over, blow me a beautiful blow. With an answer you can turn me under, wind up ready to go. When you gaze into my crystal ball, you see nothing's gonna change at all. You see nothing's gonna happen overnight. So please, when the lights are out and I hear you sigh, let me feel your warm breath on my neck. It makes me hit the sky. When the lights are out and I hear you sigh, let me feel your warm breath on my neck. It makes me hit the sky. With a whisper you can blow me over, blow me a beautiful blow. With an answer you can turn me under, wind up ready to go. When you gaze into my crystal ball, you see nothing's gonna change at all. You see nothing's gonna happen overnight. So please, when the lights are out and I hear you sigh, let me feel your warm breath on my neck. It makes me hit the sky. When the lights are out and I hear you sigh, let me feel your warm breath on my neck. It makes me hit the sky. When the lights are out, when the lights are out, when the lights are out.
I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your day, Bob, to do this with me. And until next time, cheers.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry I'm feeling a little off today, but it was always a pleasure to talk with you.